Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Capital View, a daily journal produced webcast here at djournal.com. Thanks for tuning in on this Monday, June the 20th, 2016, first day of summer. Brad Locke here with you, along with Bobby Harrison, Capitol Bureau Chief down there in Jackson. Bobby, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, I didn't realize it was the first day of summer, so that means it's going to be the longest day of the year, right?
Exactly. And as Derek Russell pointed out on the podcast, it's a Monday, of course. Monday. Mondays are long enough as it is, in my opinion. Well, and some work to do down there. Maybe the long days will help the people in Jackson figure out what to do with this state budget, Bobby. We got a shortfall anywhere from $60 to $75 million. That's the estimate. You got the fiscal year ending on the 30th. That's just 10 days from now. So they've got to get this thing balanced pretty quick. And, one of the big questions, Bobby, is are we going to have to see a special session be called to figure this out?
Well, that is the question, Brad. A lot of people say the governor's staff's working on that to determine what they can do to maybe even avoid a special session. At this point, if they go into special session to deal with the budget for this year, about the only thing they can do is transfer money from the reserve funds. This late in the year, it's too late to make cuts, so they looking at, if they go into special session, transfer money from reserve funds, or if they can't do that, or if they don't want to do that, they could perhaps try to do some financial wrangling and just postpone everything and deal with it and sort of push everything back into the new budget year, which starts on July 1st, and deal with it in January when the legislation comes into regular session. Not to do that with everything else going on, there's going to be a huge budget hole they have to deal with in January. So we'll just see what happens in the coming days.
Well, Bobby, we've lost your video feed, but we've got audio. We can hear you just fine. I think your camera, I don't know, Bobby. Maybe your camera doesn't like you, but we're good. We're good to go. People just get to look at me the whole time now. We can still hear you, Bobby. So
I'm still here.
Yeah. So there's, I guess, different things they can do to try to fix this. Again, not a lot of time to do it. One of them would be maybe to borrow from the rainy day fund, but there's a limit on how much Governor Bryant can borrow from that fund, and he's just about reached that limit, Bobby. So that doesn't seem like the most viable option, does it?
No, unless they go into special session and do it in special session.
Right.
The law is that the governor can transfer $50 million out of the rainy day fund in a 1 year period, to deal with budget shortfalls. And he's already transferred money from the rainy day fund twice, totaling about $45 million, a little bit more than $45 million. So at this point in time, if you wanted to transfer more money out of the rainy day fund, he'd have to call a special session. And of course, he's also made 2 rounds of budget cuts in addition to transferring that money. And this is all coming about because revenue collections are not meeting projections. We're about $200 million, $260 million short of revenue projections.
One thing that you'd mentioned on the podcast, which will be dropping soon, the memo podcast, but there's a $150 million line of credit, for instance, to deal with the Medicaid shortfall. I mean, that's just, I guess, one thing, Bobby, but it's kind of tricky overall, isn't it?
It's all tricky. I'm under the impression that if they wanted to do this, deal with a budget shortfall for this current year, this last month of the year, without calling a special session, I'm under the impression that there's some some laws out there that are maybe some arcane laws that would allow them to do that. But at some point, they got to balance the books. And like I said, if they wait till January of 2017 to start dealing with all this, when there's probably going to be a shortfall for the new budget year also, it could create quite the havoc in the 2017 session.
I mean, we talked about the rainy day fund. It's got about $350 million in it right now. Obviously not something you want to go to the well too many times on that, Bobby. I mean, the state law basically says they have to be balanced, maybe not necessarily on a certain date. But, I mean, what happens if they just simply can't figure this out? Like you said, does it just kind of roll over to the next legislative session?
I mean, that's a good question. I wrote about in the Sunday story that in the early 2000s, then Governor Musgrove did not have the balanced budget when the fiscal year ended on June 30th. But sometimes shortly after that, he transferred $50 million from the rainy day fund to balance the budget for the previous fiscal year. The only problem with the Governor Bryant doing that currently is, as we spoke of already, he's already transferred $45 million, a little bit more than $45 million this current year. So he's only got $4 million to go. And when you're talking about, you and I, neither one are math whizzes, but $4 million will balance this $60 million shortfall.
Yeah. Even I can figure that out, Bobby. By the way, we got your video feedback, Bobby. So
okay.
We can all.
Well, I quit scratching my head.
We can all behold your cherubic features. Story you had late last week regarding this: the Attorney General Jim Hood's office. They were asked to issue opinions on the budget, kind of for the layman like myself who doesn't quite understand how this works as well as you do. Why was Jim Hood's office asked to release these opinions, and what do they mean regarding the budget?
The key thing to remember is Jim Hood, the Attorney General, is the attorney for the state. And this is also dealing with a budget, but it's dealing with the budget year that starts on July 1st. And what the legislature did for the July 1st, for the new budget year, is they're sweeping money, as they say, from various special funds. They're sweeping by $190 million from various special funds to balance the budget for the upcoming year. Now, Attorney General Hood says the way they're doing that, these are special funds that are fees or levies or assessments that are generated to pay for particular things, specific things, and they're going to take all that money away from the agencies and put it in a general fund to balance the budget. But he's saying the way they're doing that is the bill doesn't, the way they're doing it, the law that they passed doesn't actually do what they intended to do. So he says that the money that they're trying to sweep into the general fund is not there. So if that's the case, they're going to be, that's just another budget problem. They're going to be short, make them even a bigger deficit starting for the new budget year. So, and the state fiscal officer who actually writes the checks to the agencies from the general fund says that if that's the opinion of the Attorney General, that he's going to follow that opinion because he is the state's attorney, and so he won't be writing those checks from these special fund agencies to the general fund. Now, the only problem with that is the state fiscal officer is retiring on June 30th, so we're going to have a new state fiscal officer. So it's just a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen with the budget for this year and for the upcoming year. One thing for certain, Brad, is state governments never totally shut down, so they'll hopefully figure something out.
Yeah, that Kevin Upchurch is the fiscal officer whom you mentioned. And, these opinions don't carry weight of law, the Attorney General opinions, but they do offer protection, don't they? From any legal action against officials who follow the.
That's right. If the state official was in court and his defense was, I was only doing what my attorney, the duly elected Attorney General of the state, was telling me was the right thing to do, that would protect him from any type of liability, is the way I understand that law.
Okay. Well, good deal there, Bobby. So that's what we know about the state budget.
Just a lot of confusion.
Yeah, they passed that what's it called? The Budget Transparency and Simplification Act. Seems neither transparent nor simple at the moment, but
that's right.
Maybe we'll get some clarity soon. And moving on to another subject, some news that came out of Jackson today. In fact, out of the Attorney General's office, Bobby. Fill us in there. Something to do with the Mississippi burning case, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Mississippi. Jim Hood held a press conference this morning to say that all these years, the investigation of the 1964 killing of the 3 civil rights workers in Neshoba County, Michael Swerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman, that has been ongoing. There's still some people who investigators believe were involved in the incident in '64 that have not been prosecuted yet or not been convicted yet. But the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice released a report saying at this point in time, they think they've done all they can do. So unless new information comes out, they're finally closing that case. Jim Hood, as late as 2005, 2006, got the conviction in Neshoba County of Edgar Ray Killen, who was the head of the KKK in Neshoba County. He was convicted, and in light of that case. And since that time, there's been additional investigation. And Hood announced today that the Department of Justice found that that they up against a dead end now. It was 52 years ago.
Yeah.
And the people who were involved and might provide testimony. Some of those are dead. Some of them memories aren't what they should be. So they feel they've gone as far as they could go. But they do point out that there've been multiple convictions either in state court or federal court, and also for history's sake, the Department of Justice put out a very good, thorough report on the investigation going back to '64 and going forward to the present day, and it can be found on the Attorney General's website. And for history buffs of that era, it's a report where it's kind of dry, but it's still a report with a lot of information in it. It's worth reading.
All right. Well, good stuff, Bobby. Thanks to everyone for tuning in here to Capitol View. Again, it's a weekly webcast every Monday around 2 o'clock. And if you miss it or just want to watch it again, catch the replay at djournal.com. And be sure to listen for Bobby on today's episode of The Memo, our news and entertainment podcast that airs 3 days a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Listen for free on iTunes, your podcast app, or at memo.djournal.com. Follow Bobby on Twitter at BobbyHarrison9. Follow the Daily Journal on Twitter at djournalnow. Until next week, then, Bobby. Hey, we'll hope you have a good week down there. Hope they figure out the state budget situation.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Brad.
All right. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you.